Hi guys, in this video we're going to set up and solve problems where you have a few people working together to complete a job or a task. So the first thing to keep in mind is when you are doing a job with a partner, how does that affect how long it takes you to get the job done? Think about, do you normally work faster if you have somebody to work with, or will it take you longer if you're working with a person? So typically it takes you less time if you are working with somebody. So this is one thing to keep in mind. That will help you check your answer, see if your answer makes sense. If you're working with somebody, you should be getting it done faster, which means it's taking less time. The other thing to help you remember how to set it up is you're working together. So what operation do we usually use when we're putting things together? Hopefully you said addition. The trickier piece of the puzzle is you are comparing how fast these people are working, which means you need to set up a rate for each person. A rate is a ratio, which should be a fraction, where the amount of time is always in the denominator. So we're not just going to represent that Kelly can do a job in 8 hours. We need to turn that into a rate. And the way we're going to write our ratios is jobs per hours. So remember, these are your notes. You should write these examples down and work them out together with me in your notes. All right, so I am going to have one ratio for Kelly, one job in 8 hours, plus whoever she is working with. So there's Kelly. Who is she working with? So Kelly is working with Sam. And so Sam can do the same job in 10 hours. Let me color code this a little bit. So Sam's rate is one job in 10 hours. How long will it take them to work together? So the rate at which they can complete the task together is always going to be the one that is isolated on the other side of the equation. So you should always have person 1 plus person 2 equals how fast they can get it accomplished together. And that is the piece of information that we do not know. We do not know how long it will take them to work together, so we do not know the rate. But we know they have one job in X amount of hours. All right, you have a calculator at home, so you can add 1/8 plus 1/10. I honestly think it's quicker to work this out by hand versus trying to type it into the calculator. So basically, if you remember, when you have fractions, you can only add them together if you have a common denominator. So the easiest way to give them a common denominator is just to multiply by the other one. So basically, I'm going to make a common denominator of 80 by multiplying my first fraction by 10 and my second fraction by 80. So 10 times 1 is 10, 8 times 1 is 8, and the only part that you actually are going to combine is the numerators. When you're adding fractions together, after you have a common denominator, you only add the numerator. So 10 plus 8 is 18. So the simplified version of my left-hand side is just going to be 18 over 80 is equal to 1/x. So I got a common denominator of 80 by basically just multiplying by the other denominator and then adding my numerators together. All right, from here, this is a proportion, so we are going to cross multiply. And by doing that cross multiplication, we will not have a fraction anymore. So 18 times x is 18x, 80 times 1 is 80, and the last step to solving for x is to divide both sides by whatever number's in front of x. So I have a calculator handy. 80 divided by 18 is 4.4 repeating. So it'll take about almost 4.5 hours. If they do it together, that answer makes sense because that is less time than it took them when they were working alone. All right, the next example, when Kelly works with Jamie, they can do the job in 5 hours. How long does it take Jamie? All right, so in this case, I have Kelly's is still the same rate. Kelly can do the job, one job in 8 hours. But in this case, I don't know how long it's going to take Jamie, which means I don't know what I'm adding to Kelly's rate. But they do tell me how long it takes them to work together. So remember that the together rate is always the one that's by itself on the other side of the equal sign. And it says together they do the job in 5 hours. So that needs to be 1/5. All right, so keep in mind we are solving for x. So I have to isolate the x. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to subtract Kelly's answer from the amount of time it took them when they were working together. So I'm going to subtract 1/8 on both sides. All right, and so keep in mind fractions, the bigger the denominator, the smaller that number actually is, right? If you were sharing a piece of pizza with 5 people, you would have bigger slices than if you had to share with 8 people. As your denominator gets bigger, your fraction gets smaller. All right, so I need to simplify this. 1/5 minus 1/8. So again, I need to get a common denominator, so I'm just going to multiply both of those by 8, and on this side I'm going to multiply them by 5. So my common denominator is 40. And then this needs to be simplified. You only actually combine the numerators. So 8 minus 5 is 3. My common denominator is 40. And this is equal to the 1/x, which is Jamie's rate. All right, so again from here, I'm going to cross multiply. 3 times x is 3x. 1 times 40 is 40. Remember that cross multiplying gets rid of the fraction. So if you cross multiply, I should not see any more fractions after that step until you go to divide by the number in front of x. So 40 divided by 3 is about 13.3. So that's how long it takes Jamie. All right, so remember the basic setup is the same for pretty much all the problems. They pretty much are going to get set up one of those 2 ways.